Hey, so welcome. I'm so glad you joined us, and thanks for getting us started. My name is Stephen McCrocklin, and I'm the executive director at WeTeachReading.com, which is a division of Langsford Learning Acceleration Centers. Our team has spent the last 30 years helping kids become better readers. This is important work to me because I was a kid who struggled, and it's our mission to change that for other kids. So let's jump in. It turns out there is a success sequence to reading. People who become confident, skilled readers follow a similar trajectory. So there's a strategy or keys to successfully building confident readers. And throughout this, I want you to remember that it's competence that brings confidence. So take a minute and read this. I love that. While you were reading that, your brain was doing something amazing. Your eyes scanned this page in short, jerky movements. 4 or 5 times a second, your eyes stopped just long enough to recognize 1 or 2 words. You, of course, have no idea that that information was coming into your brain in that jerky form. It was really only the sounds and the meanings of the words that reached your conscious mind. But those black marks on that white screen projected on your retina can evoke an entire universe. I love this. Look at the joy here. It's important to understand that speaking is natural. Our brains are wired to do it. It develops without instruction. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to go to school to learn that. And those laughs are contagious.
The neighbors standing on their porch with their eyes closed, smelling the sky. They took deep breaths of air like they were trying to eat the smell. The end.
Notice how much energy this young man is having to put into his reading. There is certainly not as much joy here as there was with the babies talking. So why so different? What's involved in learning to read? For one, it's an acquired ability. It's a cultural invention. It must be taught. Our brains are not pre-wired or wired in any way to do this. So there's no particular part of the brain that's designed for us to be able to absorb language through vision. And that's what we're asking someone to do when they read, to take language in through their eyes. And even when you do learn to do this, it takes years of work to run smoothly enough so that we can forget we're even doing it. So the science of reading is clear. We know a whole lot about how kids learn to read. In fact, it turns out that all over the world, the same brain regions activate to read words. So this tells us something very important. It tells us that good readers go about learning to read in the same way, not uniquely different ways. So there is a path to confident reading. What is the path? Well, it turns out that there are 5 pieces that must be in place for a reader to launch.
Yeah, we're talking about the 5 basic fundamentals of reading. And then, Stephen, what are we talking about here?
5 basic building blocks to reading. Phonological awareness, phonics, fluency,
vocabulary, and comprehension.
And we got actually different sections here. Right now, they're working on what part?
We're working on phonemic awareness, and what that is the awareness of sounds. That before reading really starts, you have to be able to appreciate that there are 44 sounds in our spoken language.
And so she's mixing up different sounds together, even though they're nonsense words. She has to figure out, what the next sound is.
Exactly. What's the identity of that sound, and what sequence does that sound come in?
And then we go on to the next section here. What are we doing?
Well, with 44 sounds, we've got to transition to letters, and there are 26 alphabet letters. So phonics goes about mapping those sounds to letters. Now, you can automatically realize that we don't have enough letters to match all the sounds. So those letters need to combine in certain ways in order to represent all the sounds we need to read.
Practice, practice, practice. And then right here, we're doing a little practicing with the fluency.
That's right. So now that you can sound out a word, one needs to get fluent enough to start beginning to get meaning out. So fluency practice gives us specific ways to build the speed and competency in reading.
And you were saying silent reading doesn't work so well. Reading out loud.
That's right.
Helps you with that flow.
That's right. Reading aloud with guidance and feedback is how you really build that fluency. And then the whole reason we read is to get meaning from print. First step in that is vocabulary. And so it's one thing to read along in a book, but when you come across a word you don't know, it becomes really important to take the time to learn that word. And so that's best done by putting words on cards and practicing. And then on cards, if you can see at Ellie there in the back, she's got a picture.
Ellie, what do we got? What's the word?
Lament.
Lament. Oh, and it's a little picture of someone crying. So if you're lamenting, you're crying, you're sad.
Very sad.
You're
Yes, definitely sad.
very sad, expressing sorrow. I'll take that because I'm going to use that later in a phrase later on today. And then right over here, pictures and words going together.
Exactly. So now that you can read across that page, you know what all the individual words mean. The whole goal next, to bring it to life, to bring it real, is to imagine the story in your mind's eye. See the movie.
And then building a movie from textbooks like biology books, a little trickier than just a novel.
It is, and that's what Ethan's working on there now. And you know that old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. The whole adage of comprehension is to take those 1,000 words and get your own picture.
And you know what? It comes to this moment in the show for us that I'm going to lament and feel sad that we're going to leave you guys because we've learned all we need to learn this morning. But no, it's an ongoing thing that the building, reading, and comprehension, practice, practice, practice. And that's what it is. Oh, I want to.
Practice, practice, practice. Absolutely. These are the pieces that must be in place. You have to have these underpinnings. Then it's practice, practice, practice. So here are the steps in sequence. Each step is necessary. The one that may be new for many people is this first one, this pre-reading step called phonemic awareness. And that is not to be confused with phonics. Phonemic awareness is a deep language skill. It's the awareness that words are built from separate and distinct sounds. We must be able to resolve each sound that comes together to make a word, even when it's blended right into the next sound, so that it really sounds like one big long sound. A word can sound just like one big long sound. So for example, if I say a word like plant, someone with good phonemic awareness can take that word and pull it apart into its 5 separate sounds, and then they can identify it. Oh, nt. They can blend it back together. Plant changes to plank. They know that the word changed. They know that one sound changed. They know that the sound that went away was on the end of the word, and a new sound that goes k came into the end of the word, and they can put it all together. And they can do that with almost effortlessly. They just hear, they just have that ability to have that deep appreciation for the sounds and words. And that is necessary. It's a non-negotiable, necessary step in order to learn phonics. So if letters are out, if letters are present, it is not a phonemic awareness task. Letters are not involved in teaching phonemic awareness. It has to do with that pre-letter sound awareness. And traditionally, very little instruction happens here. In fact, very few teacher education programs instruct in this area. And here's where the challenge comes. About 12 to 20% of children have weakness in this area that interrupts their reading trajectory. So while most reading instruction focuses on phonics, there's so much more that needs to happen before phonics for kids to be successful. So without this, a student can't become a confident reader. A student needs all 5 of these areas to become strong and competent. And for students, there's one area that has some weakness in it. So how much should your child read? To best answer that question, it's helpful to look at 2 different students. One student, James, reads 20 minutes a night. The other, Travis, reads only about 4 minutes or not at all. And let's just see how that plays out over a week, a month, a year, even by the end of 8th grade. So if we look at James here, in 1 week, he's read 100 minutes compared to Travis's 20. In a month, James has read 400 minutes compared to Travis's 80. In a year, that's 3,600 minutes. And a year of school is 9 months. 3,600 minutes compared with under 1,000. By the end of 8th grade, this is where it becomes really powerful. James has read the equivalent of 80 school days to Travis's 16. So at that point, you have to ask yourself, which student would you expect to be the better reader? To know more? Who's going to write better? These are the downstream pieces of being a good reader, is writing. What about a vocabulary? Who's going to have a better vocabulary? Who's going to feel more successful in school? Who's going to be the more confident learner? So I think we can see that James is at a significant advantage with that daily reading. So let's look at this green line here. The green line is James, the successful reader. As he continues to read, he becomes better and better and better. For Travis, the weaker reader, one needs to understand why he might not be progressing. And you can see from very early on, there's a split. From early on in school, there's a split. It's subtle at the very beginning, but it's very much there. And we know that over time, kids rarely outgrow their reading difficulty. So we want to get help to kids early so they don't end up with a gap. And it turns out that early on, a gap here is very treatable. The farther someone goes out, the wider that gap gets and the harder it is to close it. So just like in running a foot race, a marathon, for example, if the starting gun goes off and everyone is 3 miles or 4 miles down the course before that student starts, it's harder to catch up because you have to sprint the whole way. So we want to recognize that if something's not going right, we want to address that as early as possible so they can lift the skill up. But also remember that while that student's struggling, they can start to lose confidence. They can start to see themselves not as a reader, and it can erode. So that's a thing that can get in the way of a competent reader. So what are the signs that someone is learning to read the hard way? So it turns out there are some very clear signs. A student learning to read the hard way will rarely volunteer to read out loud in the classroom. And at home, they'll rather have another, like a family member, read to them rather than them having to read themselves. They'll skip over or add small words in. So at a first glance, skipping a word like the or at or no may seem unimportant, but skipping words can completely change the meaning of a sentence or paragraph. Choosing to read a simple book over and over is also a clue of a child who's learning to read the hard way. Children who aren't confident in their ability to sound out new words will not want to attempt new, more difficult, challenging books. Guessing at words based on the first letter. Students who are learning to read the hard way often like reading books with lots of pictures because pictures help them guess correctly. And a good guesser can really fool a parent, even teachers, into thinking he's reading well. Trying to memorize all the words. Memorizing can compensate for the difficulty sounding out words they don't know, but it only works up to a point. words get progressively harder. Each year in school, the goalposts move. We expect kids to read harder and harder words. If they're memorizing those words, they can't progress well. It all falls apart on them. There are just too many words in our language to memorize to do that, for that to be a primary strategy. A Friday speller. Friday spellers are kids who memorize the words for the Friday spelling test. But of course, a week or so later, they've forgotten it. So this whole kind of studying plan, that whole Friday spelling pattern wears a kid down, breaks their confidence, and frankly, it's hard on parents often as well. It can lead to lots of frustration studying for spelling tests. And it wrecks their writing. If they can't write the words that they want, then it really wrecks their writing, which is that next one, which is when students are writing using simpler words than they use to speak. That's a sign that they're using safe words, words that they know how to spell, rather than the word that they want to use. And spelling on the whole can give us a whole lot of insight as to how well someone can sound out a word. So those are the signs that someone's learning to read the hard way. If you want me to email you this list, just let me know. Email me at Stephen, that's with a PH, STEPHEN @weteachreading.com. I'm happy to get that out to you. So some bonus items. One is that one thing we often hear from families is they don't know what books to get for their kids. They don't even know where to start. And so here is what to look for in a good book according to kids. Overwhelmingly, most kids want books that make them laugh. 70% of kids want a book to laugh. This is for kids between 6 and 17. About half of kids want a book that activates their imagination, that tells a made-up story, that has characters they wish they could be like, that are strong or smart or brave. They want to learn something, and also a book that maybe has a mystery or a problem to solve. Bonus 2, the debate between, does it matter if my child's reading a printed book or an ebook? In short, printed books are better for learning. The data's in. I'm going to read you the conclusions of researchers who have studied this in depth. A sample of middle school students given ebooks retained less information about what they read compared to students given the same information in print. The students with ebooks were much more motivated to read, but they were also able to retell much less. Students who read text in print scored significantly better on reading comprehension tests than those who read digitally. And finally, studies with university students in several countries confirmed what I bet you already know, and that is when reading either for work or school or pleasure, the overwhelming majority of students found it easiest to concentrate when reading in print. They also reported multitasking almost 3 times as much when reading on a screen compared to hard copy. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are more and more studies coming out that tell us that if you need to learn, a hard copy printed book is best. Here's the next one that we hear coming up a lot. What about reading a book versus audiobooks? And here's for sure what we know, and that is audiobooks should be a last resort. Ultimately, they're not a substitute for reading with your eyes. About 10 to 15% of eye movements during reading is actually regressive, meaning that your eyes are going back and rechecking. If you're reading, it's really pretty easy to go back and find the point at which you zoned out, or to recheck something, or to just stop and put your thoughts together. With print, it's easier to slow down and speed up all within the same paragraph. And these are things that skilled readers do. We do not take the information in at exactly the same rate, much less the rate of a reader who doesn't know us at all. But the data on, but what's the data on the results? Does it really make a difference in the end? And it turns out it does. Students who listen to podcasts audio lectures performed worse on comprehension quizzes than students who read the same lessons on paper. And the podcast group did a lot worse, not just a little worse, a lot worse. The listeners scored an average of 28% lower on quizzes. And that's about the difference between an A or a D. So why? What's going on? There's structural hurdles. When you listen, you can't underline or highlight. You miss clues on the page like bold or italicize or headers, any sort of information in boxes on the side. It's slow. Skilled readers read much, much faster than you can listen. So it's a hindrance when you get farther along in school that you are, it's just a much slower process. Also, back to the multitasking thing. People who listen to audiobooks often multitask. I know, well, I do. I know because I do. And it's the multitasking that kills comprehension. So it's one thing for me to listen to an audiobook while I'm cleaning my house or driving, but I'm not going to listen to anything important for my work, for sure. So there's no substitute for reading. If you're a brain researcher and the brain scientists talk about reading as a brain upgrade, it's a cognitive enhancement. You actually remodel your brain in really powerful ways when you learn to read, and that doesn't happen when you're doing audiobooks. Okay, third bonus item. I think I said there are 2 bonus items. I have a third bonus item, and that is the brain needs sleep. It's very important for learning. So kids between the age of 6 and 13 need somewhere between 9 and 11 hours of sleep for good brain health. So much happens during sleep that's important for learning. It's important that we not trim that or miss it. So remember also that the blue light from screens tells our brain not to sleep. So the blue light from screens can really wreck a sleep schedule. So the rule of thumb is no screen time 2 hours before bed. Now, I know that's a lot, and times are certainly strange now, and so many kids are have their sleep schedules completely phased into a more on a more adult schedule where they're going to sleep later and waking up earlier, and so it's one of those things that just do your best, for sure. A couple of things that might be helpful. One is there's a helpful guide currently posted on our website. It's 9 simple ways to boost your child's reading confidence. There are also some bonus items in there as well. The easiest way to get that is just go to our website, the front page, scroll down a little bit, and something will pop up where you can download that. There's some great tips in there that I think you'll really like. Additionally, we have some upcoming events that I think you might also like. The first one is Reading Transformed, and this is details around how we help kids become confident reader at We Teach Reading. That's Thursday, September 17th. Again, 30 minutes, 5 to 5:30. We're going to talk about where kids get stuck in their reading process, what must be measured to understand a child's unique strengths and weaknesses, and how the right plan can help you, again, develop that confident reader. After that, in October, which is Learning Disabilities Month, we're going to cover dyslexia. That presentation is called Beyond Reversals, and I'm going to cover what's real and not in the field of dyslexia. We're going to cover the definition and the current best practices in remediation and some of the science of reading right now. It's going to be a super interesting one. That one will be an hour, so there's more to cover there. And then on October 13th, I got that out of sequence, didn't I? On October 13th, Shelley White, an occupational therapist, is going to come in, and she's going to talk about what's helpful in treating children's writing abilities or improving children's writing abilities. She's going to offer tips, among other things, for online handwriting remediation. So I think that can be a really helpful one as well. So in summary, we help kids become confident readers. And if you want that for your child and that's not coming along, we can help you. Go to our website. You can schedule an evaluation. You'll get a customized plan within 2 weeks of completing that. And then you're on the road to having a confident reader. At Lanxter, there's no obligation or contracts ever, no strings attached. Just happy to be of help. Sure appreciate your time today. And if I can be of any help, if you have questions, we're not going to be able to do with the number of people that we have here. We're not going to be able to do questions and answers, but I'm available to you and would be happy to talk with you. My contact information is right there. You can reach me at Stephen with a PH, STEPHEN, at weteachreading.com. And the phone number here is area code 502-473-7000. If you, you can also, on our website, schedule a 30-minute appointment to talk to someone, or even schedule an evaluation. So any of those pieces that work best for you, we're certainly happy to be of help to you in any way. Hope to see you all for the next one, and have a wonderful day. Take care, everybody.